We're going to go with it, all right? So it's 5:30. I'm going to call the Riverfront Improvement Commission meeting of Tuesday, October 27th to order. We have 4 members who are joining us virtually, and there are 5 of us in the council chamber, so we do have a quorum. I'm going to change the order of the agenda just a little bit. I'm going to have us approve the minutes of the meeting, and then I am going to move the presentation by Kyle Carter, not B, under projects, to the top of the agenda, so we can see him and then let him go. So we have everyone here. All right, so the first order of business would be the minutes from September 22nd, 2020. Is there a motion to approve? There's a second by Pat. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, it's approved. Aye. Thank you. So then we'll move to Kyle. You want to come up? And I'll turn it over to you. I will turn off my mic.
Thank you, Dee. I appreciate the audience today to be here to walk through the draft of our new downtown master plan that the Downtown Partnership fully funded with the blessing and close work with the City of Davenport and its staff in its development. We hired the planning group WXY out of New York, who had several other partners, SB Friedman out of Chicago, who are our financial acumen, and Sam Schwartz, which is a well-known engineering firm. So we have worked for hundreds of hours over this for the last 9-10 months, engaged hundreds of different people in this process, but it's finally really hitting the public forum at this point. And this body today, the Riverfront Improvement Commission, is critical to have your understanding of where we're trying to go and how it relates with what you're tasked to oversee, as our worlds are very much a part of one another's, and I know that. And so as we get into this, we'll start with just an introduction, go through a few of the basic agenda items, but I always like starting with the why. You know, why are we here? And I'll tell you the same thing I told council, which is as downtown goes, so goes the Quad Cities, so goes the city of Davenport. Its social and economic health are a reflection of the entire community. And look no further than the 1980s and early 90s as evidence of how powerful that connection really can be. We are blessed to have had a very strong 20 years of development. However, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We got whacked with a flood last year. It has been a brutal couple of years lately. We have businesses suffering, and everything is not nearly as pleasant as it normally otherwise would be. But this was a great opportunity for us to stop and reflect, to look at how good we have had it, to look at what we're going to do to dig out of the hole that we're in, and really hit the ground running when the COVID is finally behind us and we have an opportunity to run instead of crawl. So there were 6 themes that this entire thing was built on, and the very first one out of the gate is resilient and connected riverfront. That is the basis for everything that we're going to talk about, because if we don't tackle that, the rest of it isn't possible. We're looking at inclusive growth and bringing people to the table that maybe haven't been as active in participating in downtown before, minority-owned businesses, cultural groups that maybe haven't felt welcome in the past, and opening new doors. Realizing that downtown Davenport is in fact one of 5 in our own region. We often forget that, I think, sometimes, and it's a very important. Bikeable, walkable, connected. Making sure that the vertical mixed use ties to that. How do we build a residential and business community down here that thrives off of intentional public investments to make all of those things shine as well as they can? And of course, once we get all this together, what is our unique civic identity? And this plan speaks to that. So we've been working for the last 10 months on this thing, but the way that this is going to lay out is we're going to look at the current crisis we're in the next 6 to 18 months and what we can do to get out of that, how we're going to build on past strategies of success, and what are some aspirational goals that we can all look forward to. So again, this is just a quick timeline reminding everybody that we started back in February when DDP first brought WXY to the table. And so we were going to plan anyway, and then COVID happened. It actually was a great opportunity to use their expertise and leverage that to make an even better plan. This is just a quick run through. We had 2 members here on this group that were part of our steering committee, Kelly on the phone and Dee here in front of me. What's that? Oh, and Gwendolyn, of course, who couldn't be here today because of her business, needing some attention, and my heart goes out to Gwendolyn. I know she's struggling right now, but we'll catch her up on this as soon as we can. But this was the steering committee, but it's still just a fraction of the people that were involved in this. 25 stakeholder interviews, 3 very large focus groups that met multiple times, one about diversity, equity, inclusion, one about the arts, and one more focused on economic development. And then a perception survey to the public that received over 500 responses. We also had hundreds of hours of interaction with these planners between staff and their staff. Every single week we were communicating. So what did we hear through all of that? My favorite theme is that downtown is for everyone. I kind of opened with that. It's very true. We continue to point out that, as you guys have dealt with on the Riverfront, that whether you engage downtown regularly or not, you are deeply impacted both on a tax level, both on a quality of life level, of what happens down here. So you can never set foot in this downtown or on this riverfront, and the decisions that this body and our body and this community makes matter to everyone. And so I think this was a great background and reminder of how important your work and our work is. So what has that work accomplished lately? Over the last 15 years, we have seen enormous growth. Actually, this is back to 2010. We're up to over 177 million in value downtown of assessed value. That's just back from 2010 at 109. I should have had this chart go back up to 90 and 2000, because that number, that arrow would look even sharper of an incline. That's just the most recent success. And you can see that we grew at a pace faster at 4.9% rather than 1%, 1.7% for the rest of the city, which is very solid evidence that the investments we've been making are working. What is that investment going to be going forward? The number one thing as we opened up is the Riverfront, addressing that through the HR Green study and Sasaki, who they are working with our planners who we have introduced to recently. WXY, our team met with the Riverfront planning team just a couple of weeks ago. We need to make sure that we balance the need for protection with the need for an active and connected and very usable, beautiful space on the riverfront. These are not opposing objectives, and we continue to rally around that, and you'll hear more about that. But it's also about public spaces, it's streets, and how we use the public realm to really enhance what the private sector can bring to the table. So, as you probably knew, residential's been the backbone of a lot of our more recent growth. All of our studies have shown that we can continue to maintain that. It does need to be more targeted. We need to learn the best kind of housing to build, different kind of units that we don't already have. So the market is changing. However, residential is going to be driving that, a driving force in every downtown that's successful across the country. It reiterated that the arts and entertainment district is another backbone of how we got here and how we need to keep going. COVID has put a brutal halt to this, of course, but it painted a very clear picture that River Renaissance was successful, that the arts, RME, live music, Figgy, etc., aren't just nice things to have. They are literal drivers of the success that we have enjoyed. And so they just said, not broken, don't fix it, but we need to do more of that when the time comes. But one of the more interesting takeaways was the office market, and we know how challenging that's been in downtown. It's no secret that suburbia has been dominant in this force over the last 10 years in particular. However, we have been very successful with small targeted offices. There's been a number of them that have opened even in the past couple of years. But more specifically, this plan is going to talk about an entrepreneurial ecosystem that needs to be created so that we can fill those with homegrown talent. And that means going to communities that we haven't gone to before. Minorities, businesses that owned by women, people that maybe haven't been part of our don't feel welcome walking into the Chamber of Commerce because they're just unfamiliar with it. And in addition to the more traditional entrepreneurs we've always worked with, we're gonna have to find new funding, new tools, and new coaching to fill all of these small office spaces. And that talent's going to come from here, right in the Quad Cities. And yes, of course, we'll always be fishing outside for the big catch. But if we're not building from within, we're never going to get where we want to go. So who else did we look at for some of this inspiration? There's a long list here of folks that on the RIC, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of these other riverfront cities. One of my favorite, though, was Chattanooga, because as I'm sure you've seen before, they have mastered the art of flood protection meets beautiful, usable landscape that activates the downtown and creates new investment. They did it in spades over here. And Fargo is a great example of a small interior downtown, much like our own, where they use some really creative financial incentives. One in which that is a state incentive that you get if you locate your business in the upper floors of a downtown office building, which I thought was super cool. You actually pay less in your payroll taxes to the state if you locate your office in one of those locations, which is amazing and something I would love to see if we can get the state of Iowa to do. But again, back to the Civic Plaza element of this and how it ties back to the riverfront. They also, like us, have a lot of small little parks throughout their downtown instead of one traditional gathering space. They're doing a great job of programming their small spaces like Kaiserslautern Square or what we hope to see in Lafayette Park. And of course on the riverfront, that if you don't program it, it doesn't matter. Empty space is just empty if you don't put people in it. And they did a great job of proving that point up in Fargo. And Cedar Rapids, of course, is our brother in arms in natural disasters lately. They've done a wonderful job over the last 10 years of using federal dollars, again, to think of flood protection from a point of view of beauty and usable space. The Connect CR project's incredible. And yes, it is a flooding solution, but it's also an amazing park that they're going to be using where people will be active and that they program regularly. So some of the other goals and strategies we'll get to, but I think it's important, again, to remember the context that we're dealing with. Flooding, COVID, racial justice issues across the entire United States. These are the backdrop to the challenges that we face in front of us. We have an entire shift to remote working, historic unemployment, e-commerce dominating retail. We cannot ignore that these are the major factors that surround us, that when we make a plan like this and say we're going to get something done, this is what's looming over our heads. So our vision statement to fight through all of this is that we are a resilient city. And we have the potential to be a residential center, space for entrepreneurship, innovation, entertainment, arts, and play. But my favorite part is that how we plan to do this is invest heavily in streets, public spaces, riverfront, and connect small businesses and entrepreneurs to capital, and focus on creating a unique and very inclusive downtown experience. That took a lot of work to come up with, as you might imagine, but I think it really speaks to what we're trying to accomplish here. So those get broken down into 5 pillars. Playful, connected, and protected, that it goes back to the public realm. Livable, that includes visitors. If our good friend Dave from Visit Quad Cities here, he'd be shaking his fist that a truly livable space is automatically a space that you want to visit. So if you make it great for your residents, the visitors come naturally, which I agree with. Innovative, we've talked about that ecosystem and building a better mousetrap to actually train and build talent and find them space. And that inclusive and equitable element to this, fostering small business and entrepreneurial ecosystem and housing that's affordable and also market rate, and stuff for the folks that can't afford the best out there. We need a balance of all those things. You cannot have too much of any one of these things. They all need to be considered and at the table for downtown. And of course, celebrated. Unconventional, inclusive, unforgettable destination. That's language right out of the CVB's recent master plan that we believe wholeheartedly that if we achieve this, we really can celebrate more of who we are in this community. So we looked at some very obvious things. You guys know this downtown as well as anybody. Downtown core, the western and eastern gateways, our different civic and loft districts. Downtown actually chops up very obviously into very different sectors where retail is, the riverfront. What we would love to do is start to connect out to the craft site, as you can see to the west. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about some very heavy infrastructure that we'd like to see on the eastern gateway and how we might solve some of our challenges there with accessibility. So what are some of the ground level problems we have today that we're trying to solve? Obviously, flood mitigation and connectivity and activity. Discontinuation of urban fabric. We've got too many parking lots. There's still weird edges that are uncomfortable and dark and lonely. We've got a lack of connecting to the hilltop, to the Gold Coast, to the village. It's not intentional. It's there, of course. They're our neighbors, but how hard are we really working to build bridges into those other neighborhoods and take advantage of those neighborhoods? No central gathering place, which I kind of mentioned, which is an advantage and a disadvantage. And that's not entirely true. There are gathering places, but they're spread out. I mentioned the accessibility and transportation challenges there where River Drive meets 3rd and 4th Street. And of course, we can do more with the arsenal. We always forget about our big brother over there on the other side of the bridge, and I don't think we leverage that relationship enough. And of course, gateways, which have always been a challenge. And my favorite topic, one-way streets, challenging growth, and limiting the amount of residential quality of life and business development that we really feel we can see if we were truly to be a people-first oriented downtown and community focused on biking and walking and access more so than the fastest possible route from A to B. So one of the things that our planners came up with that I thought was really great was this regional loop, where they're looking at, how do we engage with the Arsenal on Rock Island? How do we start to paint this picture that Lafayette Park, what we hope to be the Martin Luther King Park up on 5th Street, the, Figgy Plaza, what we're starting to call the Ellis Kell Courtyard, which is a little premature. It's not officially there yet, but I'm putting it out there. That's our goal. K Square, of course, Bechtel Park, Blackhawk, we're going to talk about a little bit later in their parking lot. How do you start to build a network that's intentional? How do we brand these things, build these things, program these things? And then you look at the interior loop there of the core of downtown, again, spread out. We lack critical mass in downtown Davenport, and this aims to try and shine a light on that. So one of the other loops you'll see is, again, back to the neighborhoods, pointing out the village gateways to the west, to the craft site, et cetera. And of course, Main Street Landing, right smack in the middle of this, which you are no strangers to, which is very important to the overall development of downtown. So this is just another slide reiterating with some icons just how much programming we have to offer, whether it's live music, film, biking, walking, boating. We have so many activities, but we do a terrible job of packaging that. We don't sell it very well. We don't highlight that as well as we could, and we don't make it obvious when you're walking around downtown necessarily where these things take place or how we can take better advantage of them. And then, of course, back to the streets and mobility conversation, you've got River Heritage Park down there where the boat landing is going to be. We have a major intersection there that needs heavy investment to be truly the gateway that it's going to be when the boat begins to arrive. We have all of these different issues as it relates to the circulation of people, cars, planes, trains, and automobiles, basically. We've got a little bit of everything here. So, not to beat the dead horse, but of course, 3rd and 4th, and even Brady and Harrison to a lesser degree are addressed in this plan and talk about how important it is to, again, be focused on the actual experience downtown. And so in a minute, we'll get into catalytic development. What are some of the areas of downtown and projects that we think that can really move the needle with the right public and private investment? We're going to talk a little bit about the why, the central area, the east end, and we'll dive into deeper here. But before we get to that, this group's I'm sure you're most interested in riverfront issues. Our plan with WXY really spoke to principles. We know that HR Green is doing the hardcore engineering study. We know that Sasaki with them is a really good design firm. I was very comforted with our meeting with them recently when WXY finally got to engage with them and listen to them talk to one another. I do feel like that we have an opportunity to make sure that design stays as important as the engineering solutions themselves throughout this. But this body and our organization are going to have to continually advocate for the importance of that. So again, placemaking and protection, alignment, enhancement of and remediate, meaning of, as you guys know, wetlands and what we can do with that with stormwater, et cetera, and layering. I thought this was a really cool example in Queens, is where that picture is to the left, of a place that dealt with a lot of similarities that we did. And if you notice our old RDG plan, which had that snaking design, They did exactly the same thing up there and did it very beautifully in New York. So great, cool example. Obviously, we need to embed these design principles into the engineering study, and we're just want to be advocates with this body to do that and make sure that we do it in a way that everyone agrees to. So back to the big picture of downtown, we're going to zoom in on some of these big ideas that we have for how we think we can spur some major development across the board. So I'm going to zoom in real quick here and look at the core of downtown first. So you'll see up on the riverfront, there's a red kind of design there, and that's really supposed to just illustrate the connectivity that and the walking path, trying to make sure that whatever we ultimately develop is engaging, that it actually takes you through the entire riverfront in a way that keeps you engaged and keeps you entertained. So how does that relate back to the connectivity to downtown? Well, you'll see here a giant structure sitting where the ground transportation center certainly is today. We really see this as an opportunity to start fresh and clean from that site, build on an entire square block smack in the middle of downtown. I'll talk more about it in a moment, but we're suggesting that a new bus station in conjunction with another development be at the corner of 2nd and Gain Street to be more easily accessed off the Centennial Bridge and frankly build a better experience for the riders who have not had the greatest experience at the Ground Transportation Center as the facility has aged. So that would be the most obvious catalytic project, but one of the more creative ones right across the street is we have the entire first floor of that Harrison Street ramp that's empty. There's parking there at the ground level that isn't necessary. We could easily fill that with retail space or some of these entrepreneurial ecosystem things we're talking about. What if it was a public-private kind of space where we fostered innovation? And there's a lot of different ways we could do that, but the point is we have vacant space from the corner of 2nd and Harrison all the way down here toward Western, and you start to look at today what is around here, and it's a whole lot of nothing. There's empty space for days, and there's a reason it's uncomfortable to walk down West 2nd Street. You feel alone and awkward because we have built a fabric that eliminated places for people to actually be. So we do believe that both the development here combined with bringing some street level life back to West 2nd is a real opportunity for us. We clearly are aware of the vacancy of Mississippi Plaza. We need to work more closely with the property owner to try to figure a way to redevelop or release that. But one of my favorite ideas is inside the old bank building. We have that beautiful first floor of the old Wells Fargo building, or I should say the Davenport Bank building is what it really was. We keep going back in history, I guess. There's a lot of names for it. But the point being is that it has a real opportunity for a market space, or I'll show you a photo later of a really cool idea of how to activate that space. And of course, just some photos here of the other residential developments and some yellow. The yellow buildings are parking lots, areas that could have a property on it in the event that we wanted to. So this is just a visionary idea of if we were to truly activate the streets for a festival, just how much real estate we really have on these streets. This would be like, imagine a block party where we're utilizing a little bit more of the real estate than we are today. This is back to kind of the complete streets conversation. But that's a good segue into how do we connect all these different disparate parts of downtown. So back to the bus station conversation and the private development concepts, we're looking at the YMCA going away very shortly. They are going to demolish that building. It will be gone in short order. But we have a real opportunity to have a gateway that we can really be proud of right off the bridge that has a very active space. Our planners even tossed in a little small park area buried within this concept as a nod to Washington Square and the original use of that site. We recognize that that's important to a lot of people. But one of the things that is my most favorite is this corridor up here. We had some long conversations with the county pointing out that they have an enormous amount of real estate that they could build up on. They are interested in expanding. They are growing. They need more space. We had politely suggested that they have room to build new on the site that they have. That actually went really well. We had a good conversation with their leadership about that. They are aware that that's in this plan, and they're not going to be blindsided by this, but I think it's a good idea that if they do grow, that we look at the sites that they have. Meanwhile, across the street, Lafayette Park could be imagined as a really, truly active space. It's an underutilized park. It's one of the most original pieces of Davenport property, and it is painfully underutilized. There's almost nothing there. And that could really connect us to the west. It could connect us to the Gold Coast. That could really be an epicenter of energy if we just made it a priority. So flipping back over to the other side to the why conversation again on that site, these are just some ideas of what an institutional use might look like with a very, large, imagine if the county were to move here and build here and build a bus station with it. This is more like Rock Island, where they built a private housing development, but had a small outdoor bus station associated with it that uses the street to pull up and pick riders up. And this is more of a Chicago concept where you'd have a park above and parking underneath, which is the most expensive idea by a long shot, but pretty cool, and we thought we'd throw it out there. In the event that you really wanted to make the investment, that's a hell of an idea and would be a really great use of real estate that's highly efficient. But it is not lost on me on how challenging that would be, but worthy nonetheless of being on the table. So as we move back over to the east side of downtown, we have a couple of things to point out. The Mid-American Energy site, where they have that single low-slung building right next to the Quad City Times, is going away. At least it won't be, there will no longer be people there in the not-too-distant future. They are going to move those employees to the tower that they have just spent millions of dollars renovating. So the call center will eventually move into the tower with the rest of the Mid-American employees, and we will have another full square block opportunity to develop right in the middle of downtown. We really think this is where we can do row housing, where we don't have that right now with a garage and say, I'm 30, I just had a kid, I've been living downtown, I love it, but I just don't have enough room in my apartment. We do not have an opportunity right now for that kind of individual to live downtown. We really think that this is a really dense and great space to be able to do that. We'll see the Motor Row Retail Historic District over here to continue that. The new building going up in front of the River Center is going to add multiple retail bays to really give us a retail corridor on East 2nd Street again, which is wonderful. And we had our planners point out, this is great when you get people to fly in from out of town and they see something that you see every day differently. They looked at the parking lot at the Blackhawk and they're like, holy cow, that's a lot of pavement. What are you doing with all of that? And of course we pointed out, well, they do fill it up. They said, well, that's true, but you have to use 100% of it for that. And they had thrown out some ideas of a small pocket, maybe very small green space type use on the corner as a bit of a welcoming gateway to that kind of corridor over there. And maybe a little bit of public space that you can engage with rather than just cold pavement on 100% of the parking lot. Which I thought was a really good vision that I would have never thought of on my own. To the further east, we have a new slide that isn't developed yet. That is the last thing we're going to add. We have a lot of heavy investment that's going to happen right over here off the side of the map. So that is where 3rd and 4th Street meet River Drive. We have flooding issues that could be addressed with modest improvements to the elevation of that general area. We think we could protect and add accessibility downtown at much higher flood levels if we were able to do that. We've asked HR Green to seriously look at that, and Public Works is working with them to explore that specifically. We think that the 3rd and 4th Street reconstruction and repaving is going to happen in probably 3, maybe 4 years tops. That's when we would plan to do the conversion of the two-way circulation at the same time. And what we're also dealing with is the boat landing is going to be right there, and that's coming. And meanwhile, we still have the old Howard Johnson site that's empty, and we have a Quad City Times building that's likely too large for the next 20 years. If you look at the long window, will the Times always need that much real estate? And we need to start looking at a plan for that sub area to tie all of that together. So imagine you look at HR Green's engineering study, you time it with when we're going to reconstruct the streets. You look at how it affects the boat landing and it's welcoming to downtown. Kathy's first bridge gets done. And you start to get the pedestrian crossway over into the YMCA site. All of a sudden, you're looking at a very dynamic corner over there that we need to start doing more intentionally and less haphazardly. And frankly, we're kind of lucky that we've done it this long and not ruined an opportunity to do any what we just described. All of that is before us as an opportunity to coordinate and be more intentional about. So new slide on that coming, but that'll be the last big addition. So I'm not going to go through in great detail on this, but there are multiple slides about detail on these tax abatements and financial incentives used in other cities and used creatively. So I'll save that for bedtime reading for you, but there's some really good stuff that they dug up in other cities: Cedar Rapids, Tulsa, Fargo, Kansas City, Brownfield. These are revolving loan funds used very creatively. Des Moines has actually used TIF a little bit differently than Davenport, and there's things to learn from that. Same in Greenville, South Carolina, so other people have the same tools that we do, but they utilize them a little differently than we have, and there's a lot to be learned from that. Same in Chattanooga and Grand Rapids regarding their financing and their innovation district and some of this ecosystem stuff I'm talking about. There's some good blueprints we can steal. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. Same here, just more information on grants. So the next steps are to start to put this all together and to catalyze some of these big projects. How do we make equity and inclusion a priority? How do we activate some of these places? Again, programming is king. As the leaders of the Riverfront, I know you appreciate that. Again, programming. We need more activity in these spaces. So what's the low-hanging fruit? We're going to be focusing on activating alleys, getting some murals done, bringing some more color. That's like downtown 101 kind of stuff, but we still need to do it and we still need to prioritize it. Some of these fact station kits, whether it's parklets, outdoor films, food trucks, play mounds, and that kind of speaks back to some of the Riverfront concepts for the play areas and how we can take better advantage of that. Sculptures, we're doing a lot of these, but we need to like triple down on it right now. We need to do a lot more of it. Again, making equity a priority, whether it is the business community, or one of the things that from our focus groups I took away was having cultural festivals and events where I'm not driving the bus, where DDP isn't going to other people and saying, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to them and saying, hey, if it's the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we want you here. We want to have an event led by you in our community and reach out and be less likely to just tell people what we're going to do and a lot more likely to listen. And I think that's a great opportunity for us. Back to the catalytic projects, though, and spaces to have all these events and festivals, this picture looks like it came right out of downtown Davenport, but that is, in fact, a building in New York City that looks strikingly similar to what we have today. So imagine like a maker space or an entrepreneurial type space that's activated for events, and there are organizations like DDP and other communities that master lease spaces like this and then work with really small businesses to fill them. So I'm very excited by that. And we talked a lot about the Y and the Harrison ramp already. But it all comes back down to public investment. It comes back down to the Riverfront. It comes back down to engineering. It comes back down to prioritizing public investment that drives private investment too. And both players need to be at the table. This is way too small to read, but again, we broke it down into these categories of livable, innovative, inclusive, celebrated, connected, protected. Broke it out into 6 to 18 months, 2 to 5 years, and 6 to 10 years. And these are very specific action items that I could literally go and get my board of directors together and go do. These are not strategic, big, cloudy ideas. These are very specific to-dos. So we'll save that for a whole other meeting. But that kind of brings me to the end of about a ton of information, and apologize if I felt like I was rushing through some of that. I want to be mindful of your time and give a few minutes to answer some questions.
I want to thank you, Kyle, and you did a lot in 25 minutes. It's awesome and very creative. I do want to thank you for having someone like myself and Steve Aarons and others on the commission to be part of your steering committee. Your group and WXYZ was very good at listening and understanding. I think they've come up with some very, very creative solutions. I'm happy to see the downtown now extends to Marquette Street and all the way up to the boat landing, because that also takes in a lot of area in Riverfront that we would like to see lots of changes on. So I'm really excited about that. I think we can be a partner in programming. And I think we can be a partner with you in a number of other ways. We have some second floor space that needs to be rented, so we kind of are like a landlord or a building owner, very similar to your downtown, and would really like to continue to be part of that. And in the programming sense, in our capital program, the commission has put together a capital plan for some kind of spontaneous playground stuff. We're not even sure what they are, but it kind of fits your model. To get in that, what you talked about is to get to pre-COVID era, we need to get to a point where we can program some of our just grassy areas in the downtown until there is, at the riverfront, until there is a big plan to get people down again. And we need to figure out how we use our programming at the Freight House to enhance the downtown and the businesses downtown and back and forth. And then the new flex area, we need to make kind of a, what is that next step for it now that it is built? And how can we work together to make that maybe a space that's usable in the future? So I'm going to open it up to questions. And I see that Bill has one right there, so go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Kyle, can we get access to that presentation?
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's public. You can get it on our website, or I think Steve's already got the link. He could probably forward it to you.
Yeah, just forward the link, Steve.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I didn't mention this, but the full actual 110-page document version of what you just saw will be probably out by the end of the week, where we're going to try to have the full study publicly available to everyone by Friday is the goal. We wanted to get a little feedback before we put that out there in case we needed to make a big change or something.
So is there any other questions here in the chamber or online? I think we're good. All right, Kyle.
I have one question, if you
Yes.
don't mind. I would love to hear any feedback you have about your engagement with HR Green and their sub. I just want to be clear that we are going to do whatever we can to make sure that our planners remain engaged with that conversation, and that we do too. We just want to do whatever we can to make sure we all stay on the same page through this.
Yes, well, we had the opportunity by line to have HR Green talk with us about their work. I think I'm not sure if we had their other sub on the line. I think it was just her. And we're hoping to stay engaged because we think the outcome, well, even the intermediate steps of that plan is really important to the commission, especially, in the area of just the downtown, but we're also very interested in what they're thinking about the extent of the 9 miles, since, that is, we see it all, or we're part of it all. So we're going to stay lockstep with them, I believe.
I appreciate that. We were encouraged by that first conversation that our planners had with them. It was kind of a sigh of relief because we just didn't know. We were just kind of in the dark. And when they finally connected, we're like, okay, this whole idea of placemaking, meeting protection, and that they need to be balanced, and that they are both important. That's something that I think has been lost on the body public of Davenport. Mm-hmm. That we get into these matches of you can only be one, and that's not true. So I'm encouraged by that, and just wanted you guys to know that while it's preliminary, very early, it was off to a good start.
I think what we tried to reinforce is that there's been many planning ideas, and it's really how do you take those placemaking ideas and with sustainability. And, we have a subgroup that's meeting on River West, so it's from Marquette down to Credit Island. And what I'm finding very interesting is today one of the members sent us a 1986 study and review of it. And it actually is what we are talking about at the table today. And so there's been consensus in some parts of the riverfront since the early 80s. And I don't want that lost with HR Green. I'm hoping that they understand that and also then can play on that and tell us, how can we do some of these things in a way that we can become resilient in those areas?
So thank you. I will close with the fact that WXY's contract was paid 100% by the downtown partnership. That was about $130,000 cost that the city paid absolutely nothing toward to produce this. We hope that maybe as a result of some of those savings, if your body continues to be happy with HR Green and Sasaki's work, that maybe WXY could be re-engaged by the city on a professional level to continue this partnership of work together. But to be clear, our contract does end with them with the conclusion of this study.
They're very good. So it'd be great to see them in the future. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We're going to head back to the agenda. Under finance, we have the disbursements. So is there any questions about what Steve sent us?
Good.
Go ahead.
I have a question on the billing table.
All right.
Steve, One River Place, again, shows 225, that's a little strip of land.
I don't think your mic's on.
I can't hear you. Which one are you on? Yeah, go.
Hear me now? No.
Does it,
It
is
says
it
it's
green?
on. Yeah. Lean it.
It's on.
It's on. Go ahead.
I'm on.
Okay.
One River Place, it shows the 225 a month, and that's the strip of land at the end of One River Place to the gas station. And my question to you is, we were trying to deal with Molly Newell. Did we ever get anyone on that strip of land?
We have not circled back. So that is a engagement. We brought out Public Works for that. And, you know, the busy construction season, I think now is a good time to reassemble and try to rectify that on a more permanent basis. But what we had agreed to many months ago now was, with Molly, was to just do this month to month with the same rate until we are able to solidify another more permanent arrangement.
Molly's never said anything about the 225.
No, no.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the disbursements?
I have a question too.
Oh, you have, I didn't see it. I'm sorry, Pat. Go ahead.
Well, we're talking also about this, the summary of the financials for.
Sure, the
2020.
preliminary audit.
That's part of this disbursement, right, conversation? Okay. And is this, I don't know, is this called an audit or what is this actually?
The city yearly, I mean, it's a audit of the financial, of which we are one of the accounts. So yes, this is.
So it is the audit?
Yes, I mean, this is a preliminary, usually I am able to obtain the preliminary finding, and then a few months from now, we'll get the
Yeah,
final one.
November.
Right.
Okay. I have a few questions on it.
Okay.
Does the revenues include delinquent rents? Are they included in the revenues, or is that actual revenue?
It's my understanding this is actual.
Okay, good. What about other revenue? You know, we projected 25,000 and we got 90. What's the difference?
Well, I'm going to guess some of that is past due being paid.
Oh,
Is my guess. And then it could be also that as we have increased sharing for utilities, that sometimes my number, I keep conservative. And so sometimes that, we're passing those costs and prorating them accordingly with many of our tenants. And so that number does tend to fluctuate upward.
So you'll have a more definitive.
Yep.
breakdown, and that'll help us with the
Right.
next year's
But
budget.
that wouldn't be in revenue, that'd be in expenses, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
there's also,
The
well, the
utility?
revenue.
They
we-
pay.
They pay us after we've paid it, so that would be reflected in
Oh, I
both
see.
sides of it, but yes. Also, we occasionally with a grant that is for operational, not specific capital projects. And there, that's where that would go as well. Those monies, that funding would be placed in what we call the X24. So we have two revenue accounts, that one and a rent account. Those together make up our revenue, and then further down, you'll see the transfers in, which is the $75,000 we receive from the city each year, and then the 52.5 right beneath it is the transfer out each year. That's to support the Riverfront maintenance program. So you see those further down the column.
So, yeah, well, I just want to compliment you then in the end. I mean, we're now up 81,000 in reserve. Every year we were
Yeah.
negative, and we've changed that around, and now we're getting healthier.
Yeah,
That's a good
we-
sign.
And I think we are, we're emerging stronger here, but at the same time, it can be very quickly, for example, I'd love to just run with the compliment, thank you, Pat, but at the same time, we have to be mindful that, we lose one tenant, and we are now trying to occupy or fill that vacancy on the second floor of Union Station. But that is a nearly $25,000 to $30,000 loss a year that can make a big shift. So we see those shifts sometimes by something as simple as that. And so I feel good about it, like we were on top of it. Hopefully we'll only take a couple months to fill it, but those fluctuations can happen and do happen, and we have to be ready to react to them.
Okay.
But thank
So
you.
that was just for our edification, that page, right?
It,
We're not
it was,
approving it, yeah.
what
I
I usually
appreciate it.
do would be here in a couple months, then would come back to you as we entertain the fiscal year 22, and we would look we'd look operationally, and we would kind of pivot back and look into the future a little bit with a recommendation for that budget. So I like to, as soon as I receive this, like to forward it on to you all.
Okay. Bill, you have another question?
I just think,
Go ahead.
we ought to all be cognizant of the fact that how we got from 13 to 81 is because of Steve's diligence and keeping after all those rental areas and keeping them full.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Okay. All right. I still need a motion. Pat, is there a second? Second. Neil seconds it. All those in favor? Aye. All right. It's approved. Let's move on to leases. We have two leases this evening. The Front Street Brewery lease, which I believe is the combined lease, finally, same dollar amount as the previous, but we're only seeing one, so it's a pretty standard lease. Is there any question with that one?
And it's for a 3-year renewal.
Right. Thank you. All right, there's no questions. Is there a motion to approve this lease?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Bill and Bill, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. All right, now, Steve, will you explain to us the diner?
Absolutely. So based on feedback from last month, this remains a 1-year renewal, but we were able to work out an agreement with the diner to trim some square footage from what they really have. They have 5,000 square feet, as you recall, 3,000 upstairs and 2,000 on the main level. And the main level is a little complicated because of what I'd call an easement, and I am calling it that. So we've essentially removed 1,000 square feet from that, which brings down, going forward, the rent owed by $9,000 a year. That's reflected on page 2 of their lease under rental 3B. Now 3C I added because this was feedback that I further received from many of you at last meeting, and I'll just read it. regarding past due rent owed with each with each additional monthly payment received applied to past due rent, a $750 discount will be applied to the remaining balance up to a total of $9,000. And so essentially, we have worked out with Tara Elkins of the diner that with each month, this is a 12-month agreement, and with each month payment made for additional rent owed, back rent, so if you will, that we will apply each month a $750 credit up to another total of $9,000. And so if she is paid, I'll give it to you this way, if she's paid up at the end of this term, this new renewal in 12 months, 1 year from now, the discount based on going forward and looking back would be upwards $18,000, which reflects what I think I heard from you all, that gives, given what she had encountered for the first 2 years of operation with a bunch of challenges that she faced, and our interest in assisting to the point that we are supporting this tenant, I think it fits in line with what feedback I heard from all of you that I was asked to pursue. And so we will work together, even have monthly, if not more often, monthly sessions, discussions with one another, and ensure that this is moved along, and we'll decide, I guess, as we move closer, how well that has worked out. Okay, so there's this built-in incentive for the restoration within a year of total payment owed.
Yeah, I look at it just slightly different, in that the 2,000 square feet that are in the downstairs, very difficult to use in that business in any way. And I think it makes a lot of sense to reduce it by that 1,000 square feet. So instead of a discount, I think we're just acknowledging that the diner, as it exists today, really can't support 2,000 square feet of empty space with the current environment, COVID, flood, all of the construction where you couldn't even walk there all summer to this summer. And so I think it's more of recognizing that it's a restaurant that can support itself upstairs, and we're hoping that that she can pay back rent. I really appreciate how you have written C, because if things don't work out, well, unfortunately, she will owe us all that back payment somehow for all 5,000 square feet. So I'm hoping that this next year's a lot better for her, and I suggest that we all visit when we can.
And I would just add that I have already coordinated with the farmer's market, because in the winter months, that basically the last day of the outdoor season is this Saturday, but for a couple months, at least during the winter, they run out of space for interested vendors. And so what we will be doing is utilizing an attempt to also cross-promote and to bring business both ways. At the other end, we will make use of some of this additional square footage that we now have available in the lower level on the east end. So it won't be just, vast emptiness. We'll try to program it best we can as well. It's kind of a win-win at this stage of the game.
Yes, so when she was here and spoke to us, I think it was last month, she was hopeful that things were headed in a positive direction. Is that continuing? Does that seem to be going, things are going well?
Yes.
Under the circumstances?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Steve, we had a discussion today about the diner and the leases, and I'm still confused as to the upstairs when you go outside is a real nice deck built on the outside. It's I would think very useful. At least I don't understand who has control of that and how somebody rents it.
Yeah, so she has exclusivity as part of this lease of the deck. And yet what we try to do at the Freight House is make sure that you can have something from the Freight House Farmers Market and go to the other end. I mean, we don't quote unquote police what you've purchased and just sitting within your lines. Liquor would be an exception. It's supposed to stay within the places that it's been sold. But to answer your question specifically for the upper level deck, she's got exclusivity on that deck. Others can utilize the deck, the entirety, but it's part of her lease, the upper level.
So if somebody wants to rent it, where do they go?
They go to her. I mean, yeah, I don't even know if she does that piece of it, you know, or is willing to. She might, but it's all under her. Yes. Yep.
Is there a motion to approve this lease?
I got a question real quick.
Oh, still, wait a minute, we got a question.
Yeah. So Steve, I may have misunderstood a little bit, but so pretty much we're dealing with about 1,000 square foot on the bottom that are still going to be able to be used in some way, but didn't you say it was like 2,000 feet? So
Yeah, so she still has she has an office that she has down there, and there's some stored items, so it wasn't relinquishing the entirety of the main level. She still needs some of it. So that's what we agreed to was part of it.
She needs an entrance and exit too, because that's where the elevator is.
That is correct, yeah.
So a lot of it, not a lot of it, but there's wasted space because you got
Yes.
two entrances. And then you can go up the steps right away, no big deal, but to get to the elevator, you have to use some of that other space.
It truly is in many ways, it's challenged because it's an unusable easement except for some very creative, we've had to be somewhat creative here. There's some limitations on what we could really find in that area or recruit to that area on a permanent basis. So we're doing our best to that.
awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve? Pat, a second? Second. Bill? Get Bill here, all right. All those in favor? Okay, it's approved. Now we're down to projects, but really I wouldn't call this next one a project. We have an open secretarial position right now because Ryan left us for Kansas City. And we have a new person filling his position, and that's great. But we have someone who's willing to take the minutes and spend time with Steve on those. So we have Neil, who said he would do it. So I need a motion to approve this.
I make a motion to approve Neil Kosman to fill the unexpired term of Secretary of our Commission.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. All right, you have to take notes now. Congratulations, Neil.
And you have to work with me. Sorry.
All right. Okay, Steve, we can maybe go down the list rather quickly, maybe.
I certainly will. So item C on the agenda under our strategic plan and specifically River West, we will meet, that subcommittee will meet again this Thursday to go over, basically, we have identified there's been consensus on a number of actionable items. And we need to prioritize as a group. And it would be following that meeting, I'm looking at the following Riverfront Improvement Commission meeting in a month, that we would have something for us to actually look at and to talk about as we had discussed. So I think we're moving along. We never intended that River West group to be, horribly meetinged out, but we have been able to find ways to get together both physically and virtually and gain early consensus on a number of very worthwhile ideas and a vision. So that is progressing nicely. I would look at no real update on the Union Station interior exterior piece, except to tell you that FEMA we have not heard word for sure, but we feel like they are going to support us ultimately, and should hear yet this winter about the Union Station flood mitigation piece. And, hopefully we'll be able to get on that right away. The Canadian Pacific Railroad crossings, I think many of you, if you've been in the area recently, it can see the progress in all of them really. I mean, from River Heritage Park to Gaines to Harrison, with I think the Ripley Street crossing and the road opened the last time we met a month ago, and so there's been a lot of progress even since then. And even going down to, they recently poured the new elevated rec trail area. They put the asphalt layer on that, and it is very new. Beiderbecke and that general area around Union Station on the other side of the tracks, if you will, is a very it's turned out just fine in many ways, and so it would be nice to move this project to completion, and as well as the sewer project that has occupied a lot of our area in 2020 as well. But I think certainly as winter approaches, all of those are the goals, and they continue to look like they're going to meet them. So.
I have a question. The side slopes of the bike trail, is that going to be a maintenance item for us in parks?
Yes.
Both sides,
Presumably.
I would imagine. Are they going to seed it then?
Yeah, that's a question I have too, because
Okay,
I'm not
all right.
sure. I'll follow up on that because
They may
we
not be
have
able to
not,
do it till
we may
spring, I
have
don't
missed,
know.
right? We
Yeah.
I feel like we've missed that window for
Yeah,
that
okay.
one, but.
All right, that brings us to staff report. Do you,
Outside, in the interest of time as well, but outside of letting you know that I included in your packet the 2021 meeting schedule. And so I can send that out in different ways if you need it, but I wanted to make sure you at least had that as we go into the end of the year. I'd also say that there's a group still working to make sure that a socially distanced and responsible Chris Kindlemark can take place. That will be the first weekend in December. It's primarily an outdoor event, you might recall, at the Freight House, and it is likely to be somewhat scaled back due to the COVID and all of that. But I think that there's a number of small businesses and various vendors that are still interested in pursuing something, and I think we can add some music and make sure that our COVID plan is intact, and we certainly were able to do so with the farmers market throughout this entire year. So I just wanted to make mention of that piece as well.
I just want to bring up one thing here for you, Steve. I know that we will probably maybe see your preliminary budget next month. Would that be true? Because you have to turn it in the 1st of December?
It's usually about December that you see it, but I can do whatever.
All right. I don't know when you have to turn it in. I guess I don't want to sound like a politician. There are maybe 3 things that I would like you to think about how you want to address it and then discuss it with us. The first one is maintenance. We have discussed the idea of maybe working with the downtown partnership of doing a higher level of, or doing maintenance for us around the Freight House to give us a higher level of maintenance. And I mean basically emptying the trash containers and all those kinds of things that Steve seems to have to be there to get it done. And some other areas. I would like to see if you can sit down with them and try to figure that out. I would also like you to reach out to the park staff on what monies they allocate for that. And so we have a kind of a concept of what we could be dealing with. The second thing that I would like you to do is I would like you to reach out to, I guess, Zach, whoever did the landscape design for the flex lot. And I would like to see a list of all the specimens that were planted and how they should be maintained, how often they should be cut, what needs to be done there. And then we need to be able to put together a budget for that, what that is. But I first would like to see what that's going to be like. All that grass is going to be laying on the bench concrete, and people won't be able to sit there in the spring. So I don't know. I think there needs to be some discussion. The other thing is, we have a sweet gum tree. Every one of them are a sweet gum tree. So I would really like to know the age of those trees. I don't believe there is a cultivar. There is a berry that is very prickly when it starts growing, though I think it's a young tree, and usually they don't get fruit for the first 15 years. But that's another item that I think we have to think about. So I'd like to see what he could put together as specimens, the maintenance, so we can talk with Parks or talk with someone else on how that piece will get maintained. Because if we just let it go, it will really look rather poor come May 1st. That's the second thing. And then I think if there's added maintenance with the new bike path in terms of more mowing or side slope mowing, that's another thing. I think that we should have a discussion with Parks on how they are going to be able to handle that. I think one of the things we definitely do not want is to see a ditch of weeds growing up, because, I mean, that's a problem. And I'm hoping that, kind of is what I said to Kyle, is that at some point in the summer next year, we can activate a little bit of the grassy space at the riverfront to have people feel that they can come back and actually run after their kids and have big open space to have some fun. So that's what I'd like you to kind of work on along with the regular budget, if you could. All right, Bill.
Yeah, speaking about the flex lot, where's the entrance to that going to be? On which end? Because right now, there's no access to that on either end. And so, I mean, yeah.
Perry,
Is that the east end?
yes,
Yeah, Perry's not done yet.
right,
Okay.
right.
It's gonna be hard to get in there. It kind of goes like this and goes
Well,
down.
the raised railroad ramp
There-
right now
yeah, that-
cuts it off, I know.
And then we also, in addition to that project, at this time, we're resurfacing the CB&Q lot. That we actually have 20 spaces that we rent to Front Street Brewery, but that's getting a new resurfacing, which those two projects together is actually creating the lack of entry into the flex lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And on the west end of the flex side, I'm not sure if there's trees going in those graded areas, but or the bricks are going to be laid, or how those bricks are going to be laid. But again, there's another level of maintenance that we're going to have to think about.
Okay, thanks.
In that. All right. So, Tegan, hello. Welcome to the Riverfront Commission. You're our new Parks liaison, so we'll let you talk to us a little bit about what the advisory committee is up to regarding work on the riverfront.
Yes, I'm Tegan Trees. So I'm on my second term with the Parks Board. I'm replacing Mike Schertz, who had previously been the liaison. I'm also the liaison for the Main Street Landing play area. Did I get the name of it right? That's indefinitely on hold. So I am a little familiar with some of the projects downtown. As far as park activity, I don't have any updates for you today, but I'm excited to be here, and thanks for including parks.
Well, we're going to have a robust discussion when we bring River West back, so you'll be able to help us there too. That's great. All right, that concludes it. We have public with business. Bill, do you have something for 5 minutes?
I do, maybe less.
Good. Less would be good.
here, this may be the first time anybody's seen this, is re-examining River Drive between where it intersects East Third and where it intersects Harrison Street. Re-examining, I've got some ideas on that, and it's a half-mile long, and the amount of land that's being considered is the equivalent of 2 city blocks. If we could get 2 city blocks, add that to our riverfront, isn't that something we would want to consider? I think it's something we would. So I've got some ideas on this, and also I'm showing a stub here, Perry Street from River Drive to Second, which to me it's obvious that ought to be some kind of development, because we've got our 2 super blocks between Second, Third, and Fourth. Let's have the 3rd super block so that we've got a plaza there. So I think WXY, I think they're a great team, and I think the city would do well to spend a little bit of money to add this to what they've come up with. And I gotta say, the amount of work that they gave and the quality of the work for the amount of money that, was spent, I think is just extraordinary. So, and I'll just show you this in a little more detail to keep my distance, but you can kind of see it's a huge amount of land that we get. We essentially then would reuse 67 would continue on 3rd and 4th Street, and it goes, of course, over into the Centennial Bridge, so that's not affected. 61 could be essentially just 2 lanes going northbound in front of the Figgy and then up Grady. So you'd end up with just 2 lanes of traffic one way in front of the Figgy and in front of the Redstone Garage. So you could extend the sidewalks in front of both the Figgy and the Redstone Garage by 30 or 40 feet. Can you imagine the Figgy having an additional 40 feet in front of it? And in front of the Redstone Garage, Kyle was pointing out having retail under the Harrison Garage. What if you did the same thing at the Redstone Garage? Think of all the restaurants you could have with a 40-foot outdoor cafe, views of the river, and it's almost free. So I don't know why we don't do that. That's fair.
Is there a motion